The last session is on the labor market, and this is our original plan, of course, being in Gdańsk and talking about 21 demands of the solidarity movement, which were, in the first place, they were the demands of the labor movement. In fact, we were planning to do that, as I said, at the PDFC that we supposed to be in person, but actually. We see that, or because of COVID, not thanks to COVID, but because of COVID pandemics, the problems, the challenges within the labor market and the situation of the people like the workers, employees, but also employers at some point are much more complicated because of the situation we are in. So we couldn't just say we don't do this topic anymore. In contrary, we thought it's super important to think about how the future of the labor market, how the future of the labor movement, and how the future of the employees are gonna look in the nearer and far future. It's my real pleasure to have two speakers in this session. The first one, I wanna briefly introduce Priscilla Ludosky from Yellow Vest Movement, and actually on the very personal side, this is also a story about pandemics in a way. I met Priscilla in person in Brussels on the Council of Europe event, which was, I don't know if for her, but for me it was the last place I went before the lockdown. So this is also a nice memory. Hope to see each other in person again. But how and I think all of you are interested, how the Yellow Vest movement, so the non-formal movement of the labor part of the French community has to present in terms of the challenges we are facing now. Priscilla, bienvenue. The floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Priscilla, so I'm living in France, in the city located not far from Paris, in the very south at 1 hour, in a big department. And I've been working during 11 years within a bank, and in 2017 I've decided to change completely my work and to create my own organic cosmetic e-shop. Doing so, I had to train all over. I had to use my car so much so that I've decided to launch a petition, because when I was driving so much, I had the occasion to notice that fuel taxes was so high, and I wanted to understand why it was so high. So on the platform change.org, I've decided to address this petition to the Ministry of the Ecological Transition, to ask first what do they do with the taxes, because they had planned to increase it and more after the year of 2018. And they were saying that it was to finance the ecological transition and to help us to change up the way we consume, the way we move. They wanted us not to use anymore our car. And I was a little bit concerned about the fact that it wasn't really this topic, really this goal. So I started to search more information, and that's why I made this petition on May 2018. And I wanted to ask people all around if they wanted to have answer like me. And doing so, I've started to talk to different newspapers, and the first newspaper was the Parisien, which is a big newspaper in France, who published the petition, and now the petition has over 1 million of 200,000 signatures. And I had after that to debate with different politics to explain what I was talking about. I was saying that this tax, the problem is not to pay to participate to ecological measures, but the problem for me was that this tax is unfair because only citizens are paying and not big companies, because fuel, kerosene is not taxed. Sea fuel is not taxed, but car fuels is taxed. So this is one question over the 10 questions I put on this petition. And I had to debate on TV shows to explain, to defend my point of view, saying that if you put on the table measure to finance ecological transition, you have to take into consideration the reality of life of people, because in France, all over the country, you have several cities where you don't have any meanings of transportation. So they don't have any other meanings to go to work, to bring children at school, and they don't have the chance, such as people living around Paris, to use trains. And saying people you have to make efforts, but we don't provide you with alternatives, it's not clear for me. So this is another point I was published in my petition, and trying to explain this on TV show. During these debates with all over the country, we had to talk with a lot of people on the social network, and we started to organize ourselves to organize the first big demonstration on November 17th of 2018. And we had all over the country more than 7 points of demonstration planned. And the first one was in Champs-Élysées Avenue. You maybe heard about that. And 10 days after, we met the Ministry of the Ecological Transition. We told him that after those weeks, the Yellow Vest movement, even if it started with this campaign and this petition, now it's more global because people say stop to any social inequalities. We made a survey which received 45,000 answers. People who was proposing measures, and these measures was divided in 4 families. The first one was a deep transformation of the political system. This is what the US movement was asking at first. The second one was to reinforce public services, because as we know, we are in a big crisis, and we do not understand why our taxes are not used to finance hospitals, schools. But in the contrary, in France, you have a lot of hospital closing, schools closing, and we don't understand why. The third family was for workers, actually, and the fourth one was for the environment. So the president answered to my petition. We then, after that, go on demonstration all over the year of 2019, and to confirm what the Yellow Vest movement was asking, we had to make a big consultation. So we made, for the first time in France, the first citizen consultation, which received 1 million votes over 25,000 proposal, which confirmed the 4 family of demands I was talking about just before. This is the way to fight against fake news, because on the medias you had people saying that we don't know what the Yellow Vest movement asked for. And so, to be clear, we wanted to do this big consultation. So we made it in 1 month, and in 1 month, 1 million votes is really a big participation, I think. At the end of the last year, we decided to fight with the group of the Yellow Vest movement in a more organized way by creating a citizen league, so that we can focus on some demands. Because with this big consultation, we had the occasion to list 59 most popular demands, which are divided in these 4 families I was talking about before. And we cannot obviously fight easily if we just talk about 59 demands. So we had to focus, in my point of view, and that's why we have created this citizen league to to be more organized in the way we're gonna fight for the year 2020 and the next year. What I did this last couple weeks, is to launch a new petition, but more global and not pointing a measure specifically, but to say that we have to stop these social inequalities. And if we do not do it now, when we are going to do it? Because the health crisis we fight against now is showing more and more inequalities. You see in the street workers going on strike to demand more salary, more materials in health sectors, for example, in France. And you have people asking to a better life. They want to be able to pay their bills. They don't say we don't want to pay tax. We just want to be able to live with the salary we have. And it's no more possible at this time. And that's why I did this petition, to ask to make people debate about the fact that this crisis should be the occasion to rethink the way the society is. It has to be more responsible and to be focused on the fact that they have to propose us and to build with us, citizens, because this is a movement, is that people wanted now to participate to the build of new measures. And that's why we can maybe say that this is a new thing we didn't see before in former movement. So you have strike, you have demonstration, you have consultation, you have survey, you have a lot of things we do, and we work with sometimes we can work with unions, but we see that in France, unions don't have the same power they had before. They are powerless in front of the governments, and workers now organize by themselves without their own direction to go on the street and say what they want to demand. And we saw with this crisis that the professions that used to go on strike and ask for more meetings are the ones who are fighting for us in hospitals. You have drivers, you have cashiers, you have nurses, you have postmen, farmers. They are all saving our lives right now. So I think the message we can retain is that we have to accept that now citizens and workers in that citizens have to be involved in that new decisions we have to take in this after this crisis. I mean, and I hope we will be able to conclude or to create a pact, an international pact against social inequalities, to avoid to repeat the same mistake we've done before. So in this petition I've launched 2 weeks ago, I had 10 points I was proposing to French government, but to other government. That's why the petition is made in English, in French, and in Spanish, so that people debate on that possibility to create this pact.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Merci bien. Reste avec nous. Stay with us. We'll have a short Q&A afterwards. And now it's time, again, a personal note a bit. I think I met Piotr about 20 years ago. Not sure, it was a bit less, but this is an amount of time we met for the first time when he was setting up a trade union with one of the chain of supermarkets, and I was trying to, with other people, of course, bring some solidarity in front of the supermarket with those trade unionists at some point. And now there is actually also something that you will have to answer at some point in your presentation as a trade unionist. Is there still a place for trade unions in this complicated situation we have now? Piotr Ostrowski from OPZZ, the All Poland Trade Union from Poland, but talking from the more general point, not only the Polish one. Piotr, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Krzysztof. Indeed, you are absolutely right. We met about 20 years ago, and yes, you have a very good memory, but absolutely you're right. Thank you very much for your invitation, and thank you for including the issue of labor issues to the debate of the Personal Democracy Forum. I think it's extremely important, not only now, during the lockdown, during the pandemic, to talk about the labor market, labor issues, trade unions, but it's good time always to have this discussion. However, now it's extremely important, and thank you for that once again. I think that if we are discussing the issue of labor issues, which now we should, of course, focus how we can talk about this during the pandemic, but also how we see the labor market, the labor issues afterwards, after the pandemic, after the lockdown. And I want to focus on 4 areas, which are, in my opinion, are important and should be included to the debate about the pandemic. The first area, the first issue is precarious work, precariousness in the labor market, and of course, we as trade unions, we demanded for many years that we should eliminate precariousness from the labor market. But now we have, during the pandemic, we see how much our demand was important. Non-employment contracts, bogus self-employment, the other non-employment activities in the labor market are. We see how now they are dangerous, how easy and how fast workers may become unemployed and be in poverty. I don't want to say that there is a huge difference between those with employment contracts and non-employment contracts. We see also that there is that also employment contracts are at stake during the pandemic, but the precariousness have shown us during the pandemic, during the lockdown, that it's extremely dangerous, that we should do as much as we can to secure workers, that we cannot leave them behind during this time. And we need to understand now how important it is to have a well-functioning social protection to protect all workers despite their contracts. The second issue is public services. I think that pandemic showed us that we need to strengthen public services. This is also the core demand of trade unions, but now we see how it's visible and important. Sound financing, preventing against privatization. We see how crucial is a well-functioning and well-financed healthcare system, public administration, education system, but also, I think, energy system or sanitation systems. We see and we have seen for weeks before that workers in those areas, in those sectors are extremely important. And I want to say that, of course, it's very symbolic that people are clapping their hands for those workers, but I think that we also need to pay them more and to have a better working conditions for them. The third area is something more general. I think that the pandemic showed us that we need to build a new solidarity and new collectiveness, not only in the labor market, but also within the society. And probably remember that one of the bold mode of Margaret Thatcher in 1980s and 1990s was that there is nothing like society, there are only individuals. And recently I've heard in the television that Boris Johnson, after his recovery from coming from the politician from the same political party in the UK, told us that there is something called society. So we see a huge difference, the opposite position towards society, towards collectiveness, towards solidarity. We see that individualization is a path to nowhere during the pandemic, during our present time. So we need to build a new solidarity. And what I mean by solidarity in the labor market, I mean, if we want to build solidarity in the labor market, we need to strengthen trade unions. This is extremely important. This is something absolutely without any discussion. I have no doubt about that. We need to build a strong, powerful trade unions if we want to have solidarity in the labor market. We need to build or strengthen trade unions. We need to strengthen social dialogue. We need to strengthen collective agreements, despite the country we are talking about. It refers to Poland, to Central and Eastern Europe, but also it refers to other countries also in Western Europe. And the fourth area is our attitude towards new forms of jobs in the context of new technology and digitalization. We need to redefine, in my opinion, those attitudes. On one hand, we see that on one hand, we have absolutely to eliminate or regulate new forms of non-standard work within inclusion of new technologies to the labor market. For example, Uber or other companies like that. So need to eliminate or regulate or include them, put them back to the employment area. On the other hand, we see the increasing role of telework or homework. It was used by many countries in the labor markets just to keep companies, to keep activities alive. Of course, it has its advantages, but at the same time, I think that we need to take into account that we produce new exclusions and discriminations, like digital exclusion, life-work balance, on the gender context as well. And we need to bear in mind that in some occupations, it's obviously impossible to work from home, mainly in public services, I was mentioning before. So we need to think about that. We need to take this into account, and also we need to build a new health and safety frameworks for those workers who are able to work from home in the framework of telework. So thank you for now, and I'm open for questions for the further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Piotr, so much. Thank you, Piotr. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, all those who also put some questions at the Q&A. The first question I have to both of you, you touched a bit on that, but this is a very general question, but I think very important in the terms of the future also. Are you afraid of automatization of the labor market?
Who will start?
You want to start?
Yes,
okay, start, please, Piotr.
I can start. It's difficult to answer that. Automatization, robotization, digitalization has its force and against, it's up to us. It's good that it's still up to us, up to the people. What we can do with this issue, how we will build the framework of the robots, automats, digital technologies within the labor market. I don't want to be. I'm quite pessimistic, but I don't want to be a ludus of 21st century. I think that we need to see that it may produce problems for labor market, for working people, also for trade unions. And I'm glad that unions included that issue to their agenda. Recently, we were discussing that issue within the European social dialogue. But also, I'm glad that some global institutions like the ILO, the International Labour Organization, also see that the technologies may have positive but also negative influence on the labor market. So I'm in between, if I say so.
That's healthy to be a realist. How about you, Priscilla?
What I would say is that I agree with the fact that this can be, you can have a good point and a negative point. I think that if we use technology to make automatic task, is maybe it have to stay exceptional. Like the case of the crisis, if you have this kind of technology in labor market, that would be, in my opinion, for workers who have really hard work, when you have to take heavy things, when you have to work in the really difficult place, and not for a long-term strategy, but in some specific occasion. It's not, for me, a good thing that robots or technology replace human, but I think it can be used to help, to assist, and to in a very short term, when you have big lack of sectors during this kind of crisis. I mean, if you want to avoid that people be so numerous in a place like during these times, where we have to be careful of the social distancing, you can maybe use technology to help you to do so, but that can be, for me, something you have to replace instead of human workers.
Okay, thank you so much to both of you. Unfortunately, we have to conclude this session. I mean, it was a great session, thanks to you, of course, because I heard the word of solidarity. That's important, because we started with them. So we started with this part. So I think that the human being in the center. This is the lesson what I got, not in the individual sense. This is what Piotr said about the Margaret Thatcher quotes, but the society. But what is super important is solidarity. So I'm super happy that we had a chance to listen to it from the perspective of a labor market, which is at the end of the day, I mean, maybe even more important that open data community. But I just want to say, in the name of the open data community, civic tech community, that we are looking what's happening on the labor market. We do believe that the solidarity 40 years ago, now 100 years ago, it's still the biggest value. So Piotr and Priscilla, thank you so much for being with us, and I hope
thank you.
Have these conversations in person more deeper, and good luck with your work.